Hi, it's Phil from momentumgroup.tech. I'm going to talk to you about how to make your Bubble app more usable. So often I get asked the question, how do I build something that's usable? How can I implement the design that I want exactly how I'd like it? Can I keep my app? How can I keep it simple and intuitive for the user? How can I uplift my user interface and make it look contemporary and sleek and fitting with its peers? Well, the good news is that Bubble allows you to be the product manager, the UX UI designer, the business analyst, the developer, the quality assurance engineer, and also the client. Now, that's a lot of responsibility. And to be fair, I think that most people using Bubble might have strengths in one or two of these areas, but we need a good grounding in the basics of all of these things if we want to be able to build a digital product, especially without a team surrounding us. So some things to consider from a UX or user experience perspective is to have a lightweight understanding, at least, of the UX process and some of the tools that you can use to define what you are doing. So the first one is just creating definition of the problem. What problem are you trying to solve? If you don't know that, it's very hard to solve it and to reach it. A lot of people get confused when they're trying to solve 4 or 5 problems rather than focusing on one problem. Another thing is complete a competitive analysis. Have a look at what other tools on the market are offering, what sort of features they have, how they accomplish things within their user interface, where certain elements of the interface sit on the screen, and that will give you a lot of insight into what you can bring into your product. Complete some user flow. So how does the user flow throughout the app? Where do they land? Do they land at a login screen? Do they have a call to action on the landing page? Do they go through to a dashboard? Do they onboard? How do they update their settings? How do they achieve the key functionality of the product? And that is mapped out in a flow chart called a user flow. Finally, an information architecture diagram. So understand how to structure the information. What is the hierarchy of information on the site to focus on what's most important, what's maybe of secondary importance, what's of tertiary importance. It's really impossible to look at a navigation menu with 15 options and not to feel overwhelmed. So if we want to create that simple, intuitive experience, we need to know what are we presenting with the users that they're going to be using all the time versus what do they use some of the time, what's a lower priority thing that they'll go and find when they need it, but it's not sitting there staring them in the face all the time. Then moving from UX into UI, we need to have a good understanding of some fundamental principles of design. And I can say as a developer, when I started, I had no idea about this stuff. And through doing some of the sessions in our academy program, I learned an awful lot. So first up, we need to work with a design system. So that is a system of defining out how different elements look, how they respond, how they're spacing, how their colors, how all of this works across the whole app. We need to get consistency through having a solid design system and then applying it. Typography, understanding basics of typography. So much of what we look at on the web is text. In fact, most of it is. So what makes an appropriate choice of typography? How do you pair fonts? What sizing should you use? What font weights should you use? What about colors? And then, of course, into color. So how do we use colors on our site? Do we just use one color? Do we use 15 different colors? How do we choose those colors? How do we pair them? How do we handle different shades of the same color within our design system? Spacing. So when you're building a site, sometimes you could be tempted to cram a lot into a space, but then it's very hard to read. So how do we apply spacing in a way that gives some breathing room, but also helps the design to look within a particular style? Trends. So how do we respond to different trends of design? Is it really good to have a really trendy website that's got a lot of dynamic features and animations and scrolling and parallax effects and all this kind of really trendy stuff? Or does sometimes that compromise the user experience and the user interface by making it perhaps a bit too dynamic? And then finally, accessibility. So when you're using the web, things like the sizing of fonts, the colors, the contrast ratios actually have a really important role to play to make your site accessible and usable to more people. So we need to understand some basic accessibility principles as well. Good design of a user interface is not an art, it's a science. It's a repeatable process that can be done by someone who's trained properly. So in our academy program, we cover these things and we explain what you need to know as a Bubble developer so that you can at least do 80% of this stuff and get your app looking pretty comparable to some professionally designed apps without having to go through a long career of design or hire a really great designer to do so. So thanks for listening. I hope this has been helpful. We explore all of these things in much more detail with illustrated examples in our Academy program. Check it out, momentumgroup.tech/academy. I hope to see you there.